Welcome to the Council of Better Business Bureau's podcast, The Bistro, where we will discuss today's hottest consumer trends, predict the future with consumer experts, and learn how elite businesses and entrepreneurs continue to push the envelope in today's marketplace.
Hello and welcome to The Bistro. Thank you for joining us for the Better Business Bureau. I'm your host, Elena Spinola. Today we are speaking about internet safety and security, specifically as it relates to the protection of children. Common Sense Media is the leading independent nonprofit organization dedicated to helping kids thrive in a world of media and technology. Headquartered in San Francisco with offices in LA, New York, and Washington, D.C., we're excited to speak with Research Director Michael Robb today on The Bistro. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be a great conversation and I know really helpful to a lot of parents out there. You know, in today's society, it seems that literally, almost everyone is connected online. And with that comes a lot of opportunity, both good and bad. In fact, our national security, business economy, and our everyday household lives depend on a stable, safe, and resilient cyberspace. Today, we want to focus on those most impressionable and vulnerable on the internet, our children. Can you share the mission of Common Sense Media with our listeners and why such a focus on protecting children online is so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So Common Sense Media is the leading nonprofit organization dedicated to helping children thrive in the digital age. And we do that by trying to help empower parents and teachers and policymakers and others by providing research-based, unbiased information, advice, and tools that they can use to help harness the power of media and technology as a positive force in kids' lives. And this is important because we know that kids spend a lot of time with media. In fact, teens spend, about 9 hours a day with media. Tweens spend about almost 7 hours a day. Even kids younger than 8 are spending 2 to 3 hours a day with media. And what we know from the research is that all that media can have a pretty significant impact on their cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development.
Yeah.
So learning how to use media and technology appropriate, we think is a really important skill. And that's why Common Sense Media is there to help provide the resources for parents and for kids to help them use technology wisely.
Sure, absolutely. Well, again, there are plenty of benefits using technology and the internet, like educational games for learning, connecting with family members like grandma and grandpa over email or FaceTime. But there's also dangers. So, Michael, walk us through what are some of the great benefits for children using the internet, and also what types of safety concerns should parents be aware of?
Yeah, great question. So, one of the things I always try to emphasize to parents is that technology and media isn't any one thing. It's not a monolith. So different media will affect different kids in different ways. And so the benefits that you get out of it are really going to depend on how you're using it. So if you are using technology, for example, I have 2 young kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And there's plenty of good educational content out there that focuses on things that we can be, excited about. So
Sure.
Things that help to teach learning, literacy, numeracy, even like social and emotional skills. And, what the research shows is that if you can basically pair your kid up with that good content and also help them to make sense of it and understand it, there can be some really solid educational benefits. And as kids get older, there's lots of basically social value in terms of using media in healthy ways. But, it has to be balanced with the fact that we know that there are some concerns around how kids use media. So, for example, we get a lot of conversation at Common Sense and a lot of questions about screen time and how much screen time is appropriate for kids at different ages. And one of the things I always try to emphasize is that screen time is really just one factor to think about. If your kid is, they're on their devices 9, 10 hours a day and they're withdrawn and they are doing, really poorly in school and, they seem very socially isolated, and maybe they seem depressed or lonely, that's the concern where you might say, this kid is, has some problematic technology uses.
Sure.
Whereas, you could take another kid who's using it and they're fine and they are, they're doing fine in school and they're still participating in their activities, and you don't necessarily have to worry about every single screen minute because they seem to be doing well in the other aspects of their life. So I urge parents to think about not just screen time, think about what effect it seems to be having on your kid. What is it that they are actually using, and how are they using it? Are you involved with it? Are their kids involved? Their peers involved with it? Are you have a chance at the dinner time, at dinner time to talk to your kids about what they're doing? All that stuff's going to have, important ramifications for the effects of technology.
Absolutely. So sort of a multifaceted approach to looking at the dangers, right? It's not just screen time. It's, well, how is it affecting your child?
That's
and
right.
when they are online, what are they looking at? Because one thing might be fine for another, yet inappropriate for another child who may be younger, et cetera. So that's great advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah, that's true.
Specifically, how does Common Sense Media help families make smart media choices?
So we have a huge platform where we rate and review movies, TV shows, games, apps, books, websites, and it's all research-backed. We use a really well-developed rubric to give ratings along a range of criteria for different media. So, for example, if you're a parent and you want to find a good show for your 9-year-old that isn't going to offend your family values, maybe also has some like learning benefits, it's really well produced, you can go online, you can do a search, and you'll see that we rate everything based on what age we think it's appropriate for, based on the available research, and how does it basically align with different criteria, like how much swearing is there in there, how much violence, how much sexual content, what kinds of positive messages might be in there. So it's a really good clearinghouse for that kind of data when you are trying to sort through the many, many, many options that are open to kids.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. We also offer lots of parent advice, tips, videos, a blog that we use to help parents understand and navigate problems and opportunities associated with raising kids in the digital age. And then we also have something called Common Sense Education, which is a school platform, which basically helps educators to use technology in ways that will help children's academic development. And that's a really well-developed resource for teachers out there.
Yeah, I'd say so. And, you said it, at the digital age, that's exactly where we are. So this information is so helpful because, we know kids and adults are going to be online at more increasing rates even than they are today. So listen, Common Sense Media believes in sanity, not censorship, in quotes, right? Can you expand on this idea? What exactly does that mean? And what approach does Common Sense Media take on exposure of media to kids?
Yeah, and I love that quote, sanity, not censorship, because I think the way that we think about this is that we are not anti-tech. We are pro helping kids and families use tech in good ways and helping them to avoid the potential negative implications of media and technology use. So that means that we know that we live in a world where this stuff is not going away. So to just take it away, to just censor it and not to have it, that is unrealistic. So how do we make smart choices about what it is that our kids are exposed to? And even more than that, how do we help kids build the resiliency that they're going to need to navigate the digital age? Because honestly, it's impossible for any parent to be fully aware of what their kid is doing online and to be there for every decision and every link that they click on and every decision they make about what to post online. So we have to start very early about in teaching what are the things they need to do to be responsible online and to act in a way that reflects who they are as a good digital citizen. And that's something that changes with age. When you're what you do at 3 or 4 in terms of helping kids just learn how to navigate a computer or a phone is one thing. But as you get older, 5, 6, 7, and you start going online, maybe you're interacting with other people online. Certainly when you're a teenager and you get onto social media, what are the precautions that you're taking in terms of thinking before you post something?
Sure.
There's a lot of conversations that have to happen at different age, but we really feel it's our responsibility to help parents and families be prepared.
Yeah, I think that's really excellent. And, if you think about it, it's no different than what we do with kids with the just outside world. We're not always going to be with our kids when they're walking to the bus stop or when they're out and about. And we need to empower them on how to stay safe out there in the world. And so in the digital world, really, what I'm hearing you say is it's really no difference. We can't prevent them from ever seeing information online, or of course they're going to be online. Schools even encourage it. We need to empower them to make smart choices on their own. Let's talk about security and parental controls. And Michael, I'll be honest, this is something I kind of struggle with. I have 3 kids of my own, and it can really be confusing, especially with the ever-present innovative nature of technology. Mm-hmm. I'll hear some parents say, well, I'm monitoring their Snapchat and they're this and they're that. And then the next thing you know, there's some new app. Your kids aren't even on Snapchat. They're on something else you never even heard of.
Yeah.
What tips can you share? How can parents kind of stay on top of this?
So again, this goes back to the point we were just talking about. It's impossible to protect against absolutely everything.
Sure.
You may have all the best parental controls set up in the world, and really smart kids are going to find a way around them. Like that's just kind of the nature of what it means to be a kid these days. But it doesn't mean there's nothing that you can do. So certainly the number one thing you want to do is be able to keep an open line of communication with your kids about what it is that they are encountering online, especially to like make them feel comfortable if they see something that is really, disturbing, right? If they come across disturbing material online or something like really offensive, that you have that conversation with them. Beyond that, in terms of like technical controls, you can set up things, for example, on Google, you can enable a safe search. So, if you have young kids using the internet, that the safe search helps to filter out, questionable search results. You can do things like make sure that when you download Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat for your phone that, if you allow your kids to have those things, that you at least go into their privacy settings with them and they can show you like who gets to see what post and what level of comfort you have with, that kind of exposure for your kids. Mm-hmm. So I always encourage everybody to really thoroughly check the privacy settings on all of those platforms. Mm-hmm. There are things you can do in terms of, for example, like turning off location services if you're concerned about tracking your physical location.
Sure.
Because a lot of apps want that kind of information. You can download software, and there are also technical tools that you can buy that will help to basically monitor the websites that your kids are on when they're connected to your router in your house. Mm-hmm. But again, the technical solution is really one part of it. Like that cannot be the only thing that you do because almost certainly it will not be sufficient. And that's why you do need to have like a good time, good opportunities to talk to your kids about what they're doing online. And believe me, like one thing kids like to talk about is what they're doing online. Kids love media and technology. Like they're happy to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. We need to keep those open lines of communication wide open, especially, as it is a big digital world out there. And we kind of talked about this a little bit already, but any more advice for parents, specifically, what should you talk to your children about when they're going to use those social sites and those apps, when they are old enough and they're asking, can I please be on Facebook? Can I please be on Snapchat? Can I download this social site? What are some things parents should specifically tell their kids to think about?
Yeah, so you want to explain that just like there are real rules in the world, in the physical world, there are also rules that when you go online. Mm-hmm. So things that you wouldn't do in the real world, you probably also shouldn't do online. So if you wouldn't, curse to somebody's face
sure.
in the real world, you probably shouldn't do that when you go onto Facebook or to Twitter or wherever else that you happen to go. And again, this is one of the things that changes with age. So, when you're talking about young children, like with my kids right now, I try to sit with them when I can and just kind of be aware of what they're doing and, talk to them about like what games they're playing and things like that. But as your kids get older and they have a little bit more independence, you need to have those conversations about what's acceptable behavior online. Like, so what does it mean to be responsible? Mm-hmm. What should you do? That goes from anything from like, not sharing your password sure. and also picking good quality passwords to things like, avoid maybe like public forums, like so you don't end up engaging in talk or conversation with strangers that you should not be, talking with.
Sure.
Think about that, you think that some things might be transient on the internet, but it's very rarely the case. Even things like Snapchat where, you send something, you post it, and you think it goes away 10 seconds later, kids can still take screenshots of that, and it can last, far beyond, what you think it might actually far beyond like what you think it's going to.
Sure.
And so again, all of these things that you want to keep private, keep them private. Because there's no guarantee that stuff's not going to get out there.
Yes, they are possibly not very private at all. These are really excellent tips. And, another thing I'm hearing you say is, just don't take for granted that a child understands what it means to be a good citizen. Of course, our kids are good kids, but when it comes to, the internet and the long-lasting effects of it, you're so right. We constantly need to remind our kids, not just once, but constantly, if they are online, what it means to protect your privacy, know that this stuff has long-lasting effects. What you put out there today could still be seen and looked at 5 years from now, and also the impact these conversations and these social channels have on the people around you that you're communicating with. And also for, just safety measures.
Yeah.
Who exactly are you communicating with? They might not be who you think they are. I think that's a huge, important thing to talk about.
Absolutely. And one thing I would recommend, just as kind of like an interesting exercise to do with your kids, is, if you have concerns about social media platforms because you've heard horror stories in the news, that you ask your kid, like, can you just walk me through this? Like, what are you doing? Like, help me feel better about this. And, they can show you, like, here's why you shouldn't be concerned about this. Here's why, only my very inner group of friends can see this kind of a post. Here's where people are giving social support to me when I was having like a rough day. And they can show you that, like, it's not all harsh.
Sure.
And that can be really reassuring for a parent, and also just, again, a good opportunity to have a conversation about, like, okay, I see what you did here, but, like, you should think a little bit more about, not giving out your physical location, or, posting a picture of something that was, like, too revealing for the internet, or something like that. Like, there's an opportunity there in that conversation, in a place where it's maybe less judgmental because the kid is acting as the expert to you.
Sure. That's really great advice. So keeping that conversation open and ongoing. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today on The Bistro. Where can our listeners learn more about these excellent tips that you've shared and more about Common Sense Media?
Yeah, absolutely. Come check out our website. It's www.commonsensemedia.org. A lot of great resources there. And from there, if you're an educator, you can also get over to our education platform and download educational materials. There's a wealth. I think we're up to maybe 30,000 reviews of different media, and it's very easily accessible. I hope people find great value there.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to be on there personally. Michael, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. The Better Business Bureau is deeply committed to building and advancing a better marketplace, a trusted marketplace for all, because trust always matters. For the Better Business Bureau, I'm Elena Spinola, host of the Bistro podcast. Until next time, it's been my pleasure discussing better business with you.
You just enjoyed the Bistro podcast. Be sure to tune in next month for a brand new episode. To learn more about our other shows, visit betterbusiness.blueberry.com. That's betterbusiness.blueberry.com, and subscribe. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are the views and opinions of the guests, not those of the Better Business Bureau, Council of Better Business Bureaus, or program affiliates. This podcast is for information and educational purposes only and is copyrighted with all rights reserved. This podcast is protected by Blueberry's Terms of Service.